Hello everyone, this is Coach Carol, and today I am here with genealogist Val Wilkinson, and we are going to take you on another little journey to describe the purpose of validating all the data for the ancestors through your research. Hi Val.
Hello Carol, hello everyone.
Good to have you with us because I rely on your knowledge and your strategies for ensuring that you've got the right ancestor. You've helped me a lot in the past. So today I'm hoping that you can tell us a little bit about your process of researching for a family history. And I'll get you to share your screen when you are ready.
Okay, well, first of all, everybody, it is really important to take very logical steps to go from the known to the unknown. So always start with yourself, because you probably know yourself, and then work backwards through the generations. I'll share my screen. Share screen.
While Val is doing that, I will just fill in to say that recently I was making sure that I had the right ancestors for my third generation back in time. And it required me to do exactly what Val is about to demonstrate for you in going all the way back to ensure that you have the data before you build a tree.
Can you see that now?
Not coming up yet, so maybe just one more click probably.
Why won't that allow? Sorry about this, everyone.
That's all right. We've had a few technical hiccups today, but it's coming in now, Val. I can see it. I'll add it to the stream. And all you need to do now is select the right screen for us.
Yes, I'm getting there. This is all new technology for me. Is that there now?
Not yet. You just need to open up the PowerPoint slide.
I have opened it up. Oh dear.
That's all right.
Everyone, share screen. Share screen. Yes.
Usually if it's an application rather than the entire screen.
I'll try that. Are we there yet?
We are there now.
Oh. Very good. As I said, this is all new technology for me.
Well, you're doing fine. Now tell us what your story is, please.
Well, I think one of the important things is to work, as I said before, logically, from the known to the unknown. And you need to do that with primary sources, basically. And I always start off doing a basic pedigree. That is, working from yourself backwards. This is a family tree chart or a pedigree chart. And it's very simple. It comes from Find My Past. You can download them free. On the internet, there are numerous, I should say, examples of these forms that you can download. This one's a really simple one. You can put your own name in there, your father, your mother, your grandparents, and your great-grandparents. So that gives you 4 generations. It doesn't actually allow for much else, no other information really, just their names, if you know it. Something a little bit more involved would be like this. So there's spaces there for the name, where they were born, then they died, down here married, and so on with grandparents. And it actually says on the father's side and the grandfather on your mother's side, so you don't get them mixed up, and so on. So you can start filling that out, but you really need to be careful that you go very logically backwards. So the best thing would be to start with yourself, and I would think get your own birth certificate. I'm sure these days everybody has their own birth certificate because you need it. And have a look on that, and it should tell you the father's name and the mother's name, which you should know, but you may not. So then you would take the father's name, put that in there, and it will say where he was born and probably where they were married. And then you would look for a marriage certificate, find that registration, then birth certificates for your parents, and read all the information going backwards. And you need to really be careful of the actual names. For instance, my grandmother always was known as Daisy. I never knew her with any other name but Daisy. Everyone called her Daisy, and I could never find a birth for a Daisy with her name. When I finally looked at my father's birth certificate and my grandparents' marriage certificate, her name was Margaretta Mary, but everyone called her Daisy. And Daisy is the diminutive of Margaret or Margaretta because of the Marguerite daisy. So that's a really common thing. So that's where you've got to be sure that you're actually looking at the right records for the right people. You need to also then be really careful that you've got the right information. I always look at a family as a whole. I don't think you can just go down one line and not expand out to see the family as a whole. So once I've done a bit of work on that, I would start looking at the family. On the left side of the screen, you'll see a really basic piece of paper, a chart, a form. I typed that up years ago on a typewriter, and I've been using it ever since. It's really basic. Always use a pencil. Don't write on these things in pen in case you've got to change it. Carol? And then you can just fill it out. So the husband's name, what you know about them, and then always put the reference number, the index number for your birth certificates, or if it was a baptism record, make a note there, the church that they were baptized in or whatever. In England records, eventually you'll probably get back to England or Ireland. England don't have one registration number like the Australian states do. They have a district, a volume, and a page number. So always put that in there. Never make a note of something without having some way of citing the source that you got it from. So on that form on the left, you can see there under the children, there are no rows, there are no columns, there are no lines. Well, there are sort of basic columns, but there's no lines between them. So you can just write whatever you like down there. And you might need to shuffle the children around when you find that there was an earlier one or one was born after the last few that you've got there, and you can shuffle them about. So then I like to put them into something a little bit more formal, like a family group sheet. And that is the example I have on the right side of the screen. That again is a page that I drew up for myself because that's the way I like to see a family. I like to see it all on one page, and I like to see as much information as I can on that one sheet of paper. So in that case, the surname at the top, so I can look quickly at what I'm looking at and see, oh yes, that's the right family. And then all the details that you can fill in down as you go. With all these certificates, there's always this possibility that what you're seeing on a certificate may not be the absolute truth. With a birth certificate, for instance, you could be fairly sure that the date and place of birth is correct. You could be fairly sure that the name of the child is correct. And you could probably be sure that the parents are pretty correct. Most of the certificates in Australia have when the parents were married, and that's where you need to use a little bit of circumspection. I had a lady once that I was helping with her family, and they were a big family. There were 8 or 9 or 10 children. It was a big family, and the surname was Smith. So it was very difficult to actually work out what was what. And in the end, we could never find a marriage date for these parents. And in the end, she purchased all of the birth certificates for the children. And then we loaded all that information into a spreadsheet. And we then worked out how consistent the information was. And it wasn't consistent at all. And there were 2 reasons for that. If the father was the person going to give the information and register the child, after 1 or 2 children, if there was one born every 2 years, the father had very little way of remembering the year and the date that he was married. They mostly forgot about it, so that could vary widely. The mother usually remembered when they were married and got it more or less right within a day or 2 of the date and a month or 2 of the month and a year or 2 of the year. That was fairly consistent. But if there was a wide range, they didn't remember what they lied about 2 years ago when they registered the previous child. So you then have to see how consistent is that information. And if it's not consistent at all, there's probably a fair bet that they just didn't get married. They never got round to it for whatever reason. So that's, if you can't find something from one certificate, you might have to get every bit of information that you can about them. And it's a bit the same with a marriage certificate. The place and the date are probably pretty right, and the names are possibly correct if that's what you thought or they thought they were known as. The ages that they gave, although it's them giving it themselves, they could change that. If they were underage, they could say they were 21 when they were only 20 or 19. So that may not be totally correct. And the parents' names, they possibly gave the correct parents' names, but maybe they weren't. Maybe they were making it up. Who knows? A death certificate probably has the least information that's correct. Again, you always have to look at the informant to see who gave the information. If it was a husband or wife giving it for the other, they probably knew the information and it was probably pretty good. If it was a son-in-law, did the son-in-law really have all that information? If it was the grandson-in-law, they wouldn't know anything much at all probably. So again, always have a look at the informant and see who it was that gave that information to the registrar when they were registering the death. I think sometimes you just need to be a little bit careful and look for several pieces of information that confirm what you've found. And that can be difficult. Sometimes you need to go sideways to find information. You may not find it directly for your ancestor, but the brother and sister or whatever might have that information in their line. So always look at the family as a whole and not in isolation.
That's really good advice.
Something else, Carol, that I need to talk about?
Well,
I've got this one. Yes, I decided that I'd just go putting a family tree on Find My Past. I haven't ever done that, although I've had a subscription for many years. And I started to fill it out, and I think this is one of the reasons why I'm not really in favour of online trees that are only online trees. I got to my father's name and there's nowhere in there that for me to put in the source of my information. There's nowhere there that says I've got this information off a birth certificate. It just says he's deceased, but I suppose eventually you get to put in what his date of death was. But I found so many of these online trees, people don't have the source of their information. And it doesn't have to be a great long citation. It could just be birth certificate number such and such. That's all it needs to be. It's proving you've got a birth certificate. If you've calculated an age from a death certificate and you put in the year of birth, 1922, for instance, and then you can cite the source, death certificate, number such and such in the year of so-and-so, then whoever comes back to that knows that you haven't got the birth certificate, you've only got the death certificate and you've calculated the age. So that's what I mean. I'm not a big in favour of these online trees, but that's purely me. And I'm sure there are many people out there who love the fact that they can put it all straight onto an online tree. Carol, is there anything else that you'd...
Thank you, Val. That's covered quite a bit of ground today. And I'll get you to just drop the sharing now. And what I thought we might do is, I'm just going to ask you one more question, and I thought we'll just demonstrate with how we might go about getting that primary source that we so desperately need. But I'll preface that by saying that it was important to me recently to find or to locate and order a copy of the death certificate of my grandfather, because I'd been told, let me just turn your microphone to mute so I'm not getting any feedback. I'd been told one particular reason for his death, and I'd always gone with that. I'd just sort of believed what I'd been told, but I really needed to find out for sure. So the death certificate was the only way to go. And interestingly, when you were talking before about some errors that might appear on certificates, there was one glaring error on my dad's marriage certificate where he quoted his father's name as William. And I knew that his father's name was Walter. So I had no idea why on earth would he do that. But that's kind of just a bit of throwaway information for today. So the reason for going through this today is to actually help people know where to go to find the information they need and how to get the certificates.
Carol, just on that, where the person has recorded the father's name as William, you might well have said Walter, and the person recording the information has not listened or concentrated and put William instead of Walter.
Okay. Well, that's a reasonable way to think about it. Thanks, Val. We're having a little bit of trouble with feedback and audio here today, so if you're hearing any crackles, that's the reason we're clicking microphones on and off. So I'm just going to share my screen again, and we'll walk through together the process of using the GRO, and that stands for the General Registry Office, which is where we need to go to find the actual documents for births, marriages and deaths and others. So I'm over here in the GRO and I'm about to log in as myself. You do need to have an account. Doesn't cost you anything to have an account, but it will cost you some money to get the certificates that you're after. So logging in now, I can see immediately that in my basket where I have put in an order, I have one sitting there ready to finalize, and it's actually the birth certificate in PDF format of my grandfather on my mother's side. And
excuse me, Carol,
yes.
We can't see your screen.
Right, that's funny. Very strange. Let me go again. And
there it is now.
Okay, I made a mistake there. Sorry about that. Too many clicks required. So here I am in the basket summary for the GRO, And this is one that's sitting there ready to finalise if I want to go ahead. And it's actually the birth certificate in PDF format for my grandfather on my mother's side. And it is £7, so 7 British pounds. In today's Australian money might be double that, so maybe $14. And it can be ordered, because it's a birth certificate, it can be ordered in the PDF format. All we need to know is the year, the date of his birth, the quarter, which is March, or January to March, the district, which for him was Kingston, the volume, which was 2A, and the page number 319. And all of that information was sourced by doing the research that Val has just described. So that is what is currently sitting in my basket ready to go. And if I wanted to continue shopping and add something else to it, I click on the continue shopping and then fill in briefly where the event was registered, in this case England. And the one that we're after is a marriage certificate this time. The year of the event was 1901. And I do know the GRO index reference, that group of numbers that I gave you before. So what we need to put in place now is the name of the person. So this is my grandfather. Party 2 is Robinson, and her name was Mary. And we know it was 1901. And Val, I believe you've got some data that will help me fill in the rest.
It was was it volume 3A?
All right, let me fill that in first. 3A, yep.
Page 609.
Page 609.
And the district was Edmonton.
That's it. Lovely. And I believe the quarter was June.
Oh, the June quarter.
Yeah. All right. So with all of that information now put into place.
Now I'm just not sure whether that was the right one, but anyway. It'll
Well, we're
tell
not
you.
going
We're not going ahead.
No, we're not going to actually order it. I'm just really showing the process. And in this case, because it's a marriage certificate, we don't have an option for a PDF. We need to order a standard copy, and that will cost a little more, 11 British pounds, so about $22. And you put in where you want it to be posted to, or how to be posted, and then you would add that to by submitting. You can also put in a little what do they call a reference for yourself? So I might just say marriage of grandparents. That'll do. Grandpa. And if I was happy with all of the information and I double checked everything, I would then click submit, and I would then get the certificate that I was after. So that's the process that you need to follow for those who are anyone with births, marriages and deaths that you want to get from the GRO. So I'll just stop sharing there. Stop screen, come back here. So in the end, Val, I think the basic information is we need to work backwards, we need to validate, and we need to double check. And before we put in place a tree that we're going to share publicly with anyone else, we need to be able to verify all that data. Is that a pretty good summary of what you had in mind?
Yes, indeed, indeed. There's lots more to it, but that's probably the base, I would say. Verify your data, buy your certificates. No, it doesn't come without a cost. You cannot do your properly for free. It will cost.
That is correct. So be aware of all of that when you are about to start your research for your ancestors. Thanks, Val. This has been another live cast with Genealogists, and we'll be back again another day. Bye now.
Bye.